In case you're wondering whether there's any racism in the Trump administration, consider this wild fact. So you know how they've basically stopped anybody from coming to the United States claiming refugee status? Well, they've decided to put an asterisk on that, and they're going to allow 8,000 South Afrikaners to come here as refugees. Those are white people, by the way. So why are the white South Africans allowed to be classified as refugees and come to the United States, but a refugee from El Salvador is not allowed to, or a refugee from Panama, or a refugee from Peru? Why aren't they allowed? Well, I'll give you it's one thing. They're brown, those South Africans are white. There is very little evidence that these Afrikaners are being persecuted at home. The government's saying, we're not doing anything. No one else seems to be able to confirm that fact. Yet the Trump administration is going to leapfrog those 8,000 Afrikaners into the United States in front of everybody else. Now, I would assume that all of the Trump supporters who are against all refugees coming to the United States are going to be outraged about this, right? Right?
They only want white people here. Because when we think about refugees who need immediate resettlement, expedited screenings, we usually think about people who are fleeing extreme violence, persecution, famine, war in places like South Sudan, Myanmar, the Congo, not white Afrikaners. See that chartered plane the Trump administration is sending? It's not going to collect refugees that have been sitting in resettlement camps for years, fully vetted, waiting to come to the United States to escape violence. No, it's going to South Africa to collect white people who claim they're being discriminated against. South Africa is the most unequal country in the entire world, according to the World Bank, with white South Africans earning over 12 times what black South Africans do. But don't worry, we're going to make sure that the white Afrikaners who instituted generations of discrimination and segregation against black people get everything they need to get started here in the United States in their new life.
A lot of them have been involved in protests that are pro-apartheid, and on top of that, these guys are actually claiming that they're being persecuted for being white. I don't know if you know a whole lot about South Africa, where Elon Musk is from, but the apartheid just ended not very long ago. If you don't know what that is, it was mass segregation. South Africa's government also came out and added that it's really hard to be a refugee of persecution when you're amongst the most highest earners and highly educated in the entire region. Now, I'm no mathematician, but 2 + 2 = 4. What Trump's been doing here in the United States as far as deporting individuals, they've all been brown people. And now he's more than willing to bring thousands of white people claiming they've been persecuted by brown people without even fully vetting them. The answer to this simple mathematical equation is Trump wants more white people in the United States. If it ain't white, it ain't right. And that's literally Trump's mindset. You can't prove me otherwise.
So Trump allowing Afrikaners who are white South Africans to seek refugee status in America while deporting black and brown people, many of whom have been living in the US for years, some since they were children and even some who were born there. This is not just a political decision, this is a racial discrimination, plain and simple. We are watching a government prioritize white immigrants over people of color, even when those white immigrants are not facing any actual persecution back home. Afrikaners are not being hunted, oppressed, or driven out of South Africa. They are still living there with enormous privilege and access to resources in that country. Yet, somehow, they are being labeled as refugees and welcomed into the United States under Trump's policies. Meanwhile, immigrants from Latin America, the Caribbean, Africa, and even parts of Asia are being targeted, harassed, detained, and deported. Some of those people have lived in the US for decades. They have built lives, families, and communities. They pay taxes, they contribute to society, yet they are being told they don't belong, that they are illegals, and being ripped from everything they know. How is that just? When Trump talks about making America great again, it becomes more and more clear who he's referring to. This isn't about safety, it's about law and order. It's about race. It's about creating a country that prioritizes whiteness and rejects everyone else. It's about race. It's about creating a country that prioritizes whiteness and rejects everyone else. Let's not sugarcoat it. It's white supremacy in action.
To all of the South Afrikaans refugees that are coming to America soon, I just want to let you know, as someone whose wife is Afrikaans, who's been to South Africa multiple times, you're gonna have a bad time. There's no white genocide happening in South Africa. You have crime that's happening as a result of racism-fueled generational economic inequality, the same thing that's happening in America. We're just a couple decades ahead of you on the unchecked capitalism timeline. But I have good news for you. You don't have to worry about the cheap exploited labor rising up against you anymore, because now that you're in America, you'll get to be the cheap exploited labor. If you were middle class or upper middle class in South Africa and you come to America, you're poor now. Like, really poor. You're not gonna have maids and gardeners and personal servants that you can pay $15 a day for. Now you get to be the cheap labor. But by all means, please come to America and experience the American capitalism that Elon Musk's been raving about to you. You'll probably love it. You know, what do I know? There's probably very little chance that you'll end up going back to South Africa in a year or two after realizing how overpriced and fucked up America is. I wouldn't even worry about that as a possibility. And if you think I'm being mean to these people because I think they're a bunch of racist, bigoted colonizers who wish they could go back to apartheid South Africa, it's just because I do think that. But to them, I say, welcome to the American dream. Please let me know when you've woken up from it.
The more I think about these Afrikaners, the angrier I get. Right now, there is a 19-year-old DACA recipient who has been here since she was 4 years old, has been detained for almost a week. Monday will be a week. He's got her detained, and he's deporting United States citizens. People born in this fucking country. But he's flying white South Africans here on our dollar and paying for them to stay. He has a 19-year-old DACA recipient in custody, deporting United States citizens, firing over 300,000 Americans, coming up almost 83,000 veterans he's firing. In the next budget, gets rid of almost $700 billion in Medicaid. And he's purposely going out of his way to go to South Africa, use whatever airplane they're going to use, probably fucking Air Force One, or something bigger, with our money, and put these people up in houses across the country.
The people who are being deported are often those who fled real violence, real poverty, and real persecution in their home countries. They didn't come to America to take over, they came to survive. They came to raise their children in safety, but those cries for help are being ignored. Those stories are being erased, and instead, Trump is painting a picture of white victims needing rescue from black-led countries, even when those white people are living better than the majority. Afrikaners who owned the land during apartheid and benefited from a system that brutalized black South Africans are now being treated as victims. This is insulting. That is rewriting history. It's like the colonizer claiming to be oppressed, and now they are being invited to America with open arms, while black and brown bodies are being pushed out. That is not just unfair, that's evil. Let's talk about who these Afrikaners really are. Many of them still hold deep racist ideologies. They still dominate land ownership in South Africa. They still run businesses. They still benefit from generational wealth built off the backs of black South Africans. And yet they are being given refugee status. From what? Accountability? Equality? Some of these Afrikaners claiming persecution are now the ones who refuse to integrate after apartheid ended. They created white-only towns like Orania. They still display apartheid flags. They still preach land genocide, even though no one is hunting them. They refuse to acknowledge the centuries of pain they caused, and now they want to be painted as victims. And Trump buys that. Or does he just want more white people in America, no matter who they are or what they believe? At the same time, immigrants from Haiti are being deported back to a country in crisis. Immigrants from Central America are being sent back to gang-infested neighborhoods where their lives are at risk. Immigrants from Africa are being denied visas and turned away. Families are being separated. Kids are being put into detention centers, but the doors are wide open for white South Africans.
For anyone who has any problems with refugees, I do not want to hear you talk about the South African white refugees and be like, they're coming here legally, it's fine, because their own government even says that they are not vetted. While Donald Trump says that they are completely vetted, that's 100% untrue, according to the South African government. They also said that the people that claim that they are being genocided are actually pro-apartheid, and that's why they're moving to the United States. And they're saying straight up that it is a move for political advantage. The South African government also came out and said that it's really ironic that Trump is allowing the most economically privileged people from around the world to enter the United States while denying the most vulnerable people who are trying to immigrate to the United States. Like, let's be clear here. These people are becoming refugees to the United States specifically because they are upset that people are upset in South Africa, that they are pro-apartheid. And yet Donald Trump will not accept any refugees that are actually coming here for detrimental circumstances. Again, it's just racism. That's all it is.
The group of white South African refugees are not refugees. Refugee is defined as someone forced to leave their country to seek refuge, safety in another country due to conflict, persecution, or human rights violations. The Trump administration has granted refugee status to 54 white South Africans, Afrikaners specifically, who are the descendants of mainly Dutch colonizers, settlers, squatters in South Africa. This group of white South Africans have claimed to have faced racial persecution and theft of farmland, although no proof of such happenings has been brought forward. The truth is that this group of white South Africans are the same ones who are angry about the end of apartheid, Jim Crow in South Africa. These are the neo-Nazis, the Klan, the white supremacists of South Africa. They feel that the end of apartheid and the push for equality is injustice to them, much like the far-right groups here in America who mourn the loss of their rights to own slaves with the end of the Civil War and the end of Jim Crow here in America. The Trump administration granting refugee status to white extremists after suspending the refugee admissions programs to all non-white refugees, all non-white asylum-seeking groups, while simultaneously deporting minorities without hearings, feels very much like a move that would have happened in 1930s Germany. Government efforts towards equality is not injustice. Unfortunately, we are under a white nationalist administration who does view any and all progress towards equity as oppression against white people. Now tell us again how it's not about race.
The message is clear. Whiteness equals safety, equals acceptance, equals belonging. Black and brown lives, no matter how long they lived in America, no matter how hard they've worked, are disposable. This is racism. That is systemic injustice. And let's be real, most Afrikaners don't even believe in diversity, in multiculturalism. They left South Africa not because they were oppressed, but because they didn't want to live in a country where Black people had rights. They didn't want to share power. They didn't want to coexist equally. So now they are coming to America to create those same racist systems, and they are being welcomed. Where is the vetting? Where is the scrutiny? Where is the background check on these white refugees? Why aren't they being asked about their beliefs, their values, their past actions? Because they're white and that gives them a pass. Meanwhile, Black people are constantly questioned, constantly scrutinized, constantly watched. We have to prove our worth over and over again. We have to work twice as hard to get half as much, and we are still told we don't belong. There are people in America who have lived there their entire lives, gone to school there, worked there, contributed there, and they're being deported to countries they've never even been to. Some don't speak the language, some don't know a single person there, and yet Trump's administration sees no problem with that. But a white Afrikaner shows up and says, I'm scared of the Black government in South Africa, and suddenly they're welcomed like royalty. It's disturbing. how whiteness is constantly centered as the default for truth, for innocence, for morality. Meanwhile, people of color are criminalized before they even open their mouths. We are judged based on our skin tone. Our intentions are questioned. Our lives are treated as threats, even when we are the ones seeking peace. And you can't ignore the global pattern here either. In places like Ukraine, when war broke out, there were immediate responses to shelter white Ukrainian refugees. But when it's Haiti or Sudan or even Palestine or the Congo, suddenly it's complicated. Suddenly there are procedures. Suddenly it's a question of security. The double standard is glaring. Let's not act like America doesn't have room. That country has enough space, enough resources, and enough opportunity to help those in need. But it chooses who to help based on skin color. The system is not broken. It's working exactly as it was designed to work. And to those defending this policy by saying Afrikaners are Christian or they align better with American values, let's be clear. Racism is not a value. Supremacy is not a virtue. And fear of black governance is not a valid refugee claim. That's preference for domination, not a plea for safety. If America truly stood for justice and liberty for all, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But the truth is, America still hasn't fully reconciled with its racist past. And in many ways, it's still living in it. Policies like this just prove it. The time to speak up is now, because if we stay silent, if we look away, we are just as guilty. Refugee should be based on need, not race. And justice must include everyone, or it means nothing at all. Anyway, guys, drop a comment. Let me know what your thoughts are. And also remember to subscribe, like, and share as well. And until next time, bye-bye.